So I feel like this talk should come with an asterisk or a better remote, or at very least a preface. I'm not here to brag. I'm not here to preach. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm simply here to share my 5 years of experience and GitHub's 10 years of accumulated knowledge running remote teams in hopes that it will help you build better remote teams. And if I had to put everything into one sentence, if I had to put everything into one slide on how we do that, it would be this. We have a people-first ethos. Now, that doesn't mean we don't care about our product. We do. And it doesn't mean we give our employees everything they ask for. We don't. It simply means we focus on the why. Why do people act, think, and speak the way they do? Why did this remote team succeed? Why did that remote team fail? And we build our company and our teams, we iterate on our policies and our projects, always with understanding of and input from our employees. Instead of building systems based on the what and the how, which is what I see a lot of companies do, and then they have to force employees to work in those systems. Now, GitHub is lucky. Bringing people together to work better is in our DNA. Our whole product is based on bringing developers together to write better code and ship amazing projects. And we've been pretty successful at it. We have over 27 million users worldwide, and we're in a plethora of different industries, from education and retail to, of course, software development. In addition, we've gotten to be part of some really cool things like blockchain technology, with several notable cryptocurrencies source code being hosted on our site. It's pretty awesome. And if having a people-first ethos is our why, then these are our whats. What are we doing to build better teams? Now, I am not only a human selfie stick and professional puppy cuddler, but I'm also the director of global workplace operations at GitHub. And my job is to focus on environments. Specifically, how do I create environments where our employees could do their best work? How do I create environments for 800 people that work in 20 different countries, a third of which work in offices, and the other 2/3 work remote? Now, quick show of hands, how many people here use offices or co-working spaces? So quite a few. So a lot of people who use offices, co-working spaces, assume that remote workers can just work anywhere. So they don't design these spaces with our remote workers in mind. At GitHub, we have. This is a picture of our San Francisco office. And like many offices, we have an open office floor plan. But after doing a lot of programming and surveying and talking to our remote employees, we realized this was a pretty big shift when they came to the office, coming from a privacy of their home office into this. So as we grew, we built out a lot of cool breakout spaces. We even went so far as to build an entire library so our employees could have head-down work. In addition, we built one of my favorite rooms. It's our nap room. For many of our international employees, and like many of you who are dealing with jet lag right now, having a place to rest is awesome. A big glass of water, shot of espresso, 30 minutes in one of these bad boys, and you can wake up refreshed and ready to get on with your day. And being remote, you may only come to San Francisco maybe once, twice a year. So having the energy and being able to put your best self forward to work with your team in person was super important to us. The other part of my job is to build experiences that optimize for flexibility and autonomy. And this, I really focus on our co-located employees. We give our remote employees a ton of flexibility and autonomy, but we don't always offer our office workers the same. So at GitHub, we did some silly things. I often get asked, I don't have the monitor, but I often get asked why we have offices at all in the first place when remote work is so fantastic. And that answer is flexibility and autonomy. We're going to talk to you about our cafe we built out. We also offered our employees, they don't even have to come into the office, and we give them lots of flexibility and autonomy. The next topic I'm going to talk on is emotional intelligence. And this is one of the biggest factors on building a successful remote team. Now, emotional intelligence breaks down into 4 areas: self-awareness, being able to identify your own emotions; empathy, being able to understand other people's point of view; self-regulation, being able to convey your emotions in a positive experience, so being able to say, I'm frustrated, instead of angrily throwing a chair out the window; and social skills, being able to communicate in a professional and productive manner. Now, emotional intelligence has been shown to be so much more effective than technical skills on identifying who will be a successful team or not. And one of the best ways GitHub has found to build successful teams is to hire them and ask better questions in your interview process. GitHub is really lucky. We have an amazing recruiting team that has spent a ton of time tweaking and iterating on these questions. And one of my favorite questions that they ask is this: what are the challenges of working remote, and how would you address them? And this is so much better than the normal question I think a lot of us ask, which is, have you worked remote? And that's a simple yes or no question that doesn't give you a ton of information. And in fact, the internet is littered with examples of people who have tried things and absolutely failed. Past experience doesn't necessarily dictate future success. But by being able to identify the challenges, and there are a few, of remote work, people can show that they're self-aware. They also get to communicate and show that they're a problem solver. So by asking one simple question, you can get a lot more information than, have you worked remote? The other thing we do at GitHub, and you may not be hiring, you may want to work on the teams you have, is to build a common language around EQ. And again, we have an amazing learning and development team who introduced me to this: Strength Deployment Index, or SDI training. And essentially what you do is you get your team together and you take a quick survey. And once you've taken the survey, you come back together and you get placed on this triangle on a dot. And the dot is where you land on every day-to-day situations. And whether you're a people-focused person, a process-focused person, or performance or decision-making person. And there's no wrong way or no wrong place to end up on this triangle. It's simply the way you think. The arrow is what happens when you're faced with a problem or a critical situation and how much you change. So me, I end up pretty much in the middle, but when faced with a problem, I go into performance. I go red. And my team now knows this about me. So they can say, hey, Lara, we want more time to think about this problem. We see you're going red. We want to come up with the right solution, not the quickest answer. And I can say, cool, all right, let's do that. On the other side of that, I have employees that are people-focused. And when she gets in a critical situation, she stays there. So she's had to learn to vocalize when she needs more time to think or when she needs to step away. And by giving everybody that common language, we've raised the baseline of our emotional intelligence on our team and lowered interpersonal conflict, which has helped our team focus on the problems at hand. Now, if emotional intelligence is one of the best ways to build a better remote team, then bad remote management is the quickest way to destroy it. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into remote management because a lot of remote management depends on who you are as a manager, what your manager's skill set is, who your team is, what they need. But I'm going to talk about 2 important things that we focused on at GitHub. Now, 3 out of 4 people don't like their managers, and 65% would rather take a new manager over a pay raise. Additional 50% of people who don't like their manager or don't feel valued by their manager will leave in the next year. So it is costly to have bad managers. So we at GitHub try to celebrate differences. And what I mean by this is I see oftentimes remote managers hire people exactly like themselves. They think, I'm a good person. I'm a successful person. If I hire people who are exactly like me, they will also be good and successful. Makes sense. But what ends up happening is we end up othering people who look or act or speak different than us. We make decisions based on inane qualities like they went to a rival college. They didn't go to college. They have red hair. And hiring a diverse team is crucial to your business. Diverse teams outperform, make better business decisions 21% more than their homogeneous, co-located counterparts. They also make more money. Who doesn't want to make more money? So I'm going to give you my team as an example and me as an example. I'm a remote manager. I built my team from 2 people co-located to 7 in 3 different countries. And I've got some good skills, some good strengths. I'm flexible and equitable. For example, if I ask my team to get up early, you best believe I will be up earlier and I will stay up later for them. But I'm also used to asynchronous communication. So sometimes if things are spoken, I forget them. In addition, I'm also terrified of spiders. Now, if I had my entire team and I hired them to look and act exactly like me, and we put all of us in a room with a spider, we'd kill each other. We'd burn down that room. So instead, I hired a bunch of people with a bunch of different skills. And hopefully, if we were all stuffed in a room together, somebody would be like, I'm not afraid of spiders. I can pick that up. I'll take that outside for you. Now, spiders are not a huge epidemic in remote work. I've not heard of them being a problem, but you get my drift. If you hire people with the same skill set, you'll eventually come along a problem where you all have the same weaknesses. And one of the things we've done at GitHub is What's Your Superpower by SY Partners. And I believe this deck is like $15 online. It's super cheap. But essentially, you go through this deck, and everybody picks out their superpower. And if you have a homogeneous team, you'll be able to identify where your weakness is. And if you have a diverse team, you can talk and share about what everybody brings to the table. The other recommendation for remote managers is to get positive. Now, GitHub, of course, uses our internal tool to communicate and be productive. There are also numerous ways to communicate. Another quick show of hands, how many people use Skype? Sorry about the last presentation. And keep your hand raised if you have channels dedicated for fun. Good job for those who kept their hands up. So GitHub makes a point of creating channels that don't have anything to do with work. We have personal finance channel. We have World Cup channel. We also have Dogcom. Even though the Octocat is our mascot, we have a lot of people who love their furry friends. And we do this because of Pavlov's response, which is essentially a response and stimulus feedback loop. And for those of you that may not know what Pavlov's response is, I'll give you an example. If I walked up to your desk every day, rang a bell, and gave you a delicious piece of chocolate cake, you'd salivate, you'd be excited, sweet. If I did it the next day, rang the bell, gave you a piece of chocolate cake, and the next day, rang a bell and gave you a piece of chocolate cake, eventually I could just ring a bell and you would expect a piece of chocolate cake. Now, in remote management, this happens similarly, but it can happen in a positive or negative way. And I try to focus on the positive by once a week reaching out to my employees about something silly and ridiculous, like scratch and sniff stamps. And I do this because it's too easy to create a negative feedback loop if you're a remote manager. You get fewer interactions with your employees. So if the only time you're interacting is when you need to give negative feedback, your one-on-ones and meetings, your remote employees will start associating you negatively. So by injecting a little fun, you can break that feedback loop. Another way we've done this at GitHub is our customer success team. When they were growing a few years ago very quickly, they found that we're having a lot of interpersonal conflict as they grew. And our head of the department at the time decided, I gotta try something. And he called it water cooler. So essentially he got everybody together once a week, and they varied in times and dates because of different time zones. And they got together and they talked. They talked about their weekend, they talked about their kids, they talked about vacation, they talked about their passion project. They essentially talked about anything but work. And as they got to know each other as people, those conflicts decreased. And it was actually such a success with that team that other teams have adopted it, and we now have happy hour and coffee time. We also use a ton of emojis, and I know a lot of people use these in their personal lives, but we use them at work, and we love them. Not only does it bring a little levity to the conversation, but it can also help teams who don't have the same first language to bring an emotional context to the written word. Now, last but not least, I want to talk about a sense of belonging. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and when employees have the basics, air, shelter, food, water, safety, but before they can become their best selves, become the most productive members of their teams, they need to feel like they belong. And remote employees feel less like they belong than their co-located counterparts. So what do we do? Well, we have to be very thoughtful about how we make sure our remote employees feel welcome. When I started at GitHub, my first day on the job, they handed me a laptop and said, "Good luck." I had never used GitHub, ever. Don't tell my boss. But I spent the next few months dealing with imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome is simply that you think everybody around you knows so much more than you do. I didn't ask critical questions. I didn't give any feedback because I thought everybody was smarter than me. And in fact, I can joke about it now, but I spent a lot of time pretty worried I was going to get fired. This doesn't make for great teams. So luckily, or unluckily, I was not the only one having this experience, and we realized that and hired someone to do our onboarding. And now, every 2 weeks, we bring a new hire group into San Francisco to work, and we bring their managers in as well. And for the first 2 days, we do an intensive boot camp. They learn about everything from the company culture, they talk to our executive teams, they get their laptops set up. And then for the next week and a half, they work directly with their managers, many of whom they won't see again for a couple months, but also they get to work in San Francisco with 200 other people who have gone through this experience, and they get to know them. So before we send them back out into the world, they have a sense of what GitHub is and how they belong in that system. The other thing we do is the buddy system. New hires get a new hire buddy. Now, this is not their manager, and we do this because a lot of people are afraid to ask their new manager a stupid question. We give them somebody in their peer group, and we allow them to share information. So the new hire has somebody they can ask all kinds of questions to without fear of being embarrassed. And their buddy, who's usually somebody with some institutional knowledge, gets to share that and feel like they belong. They get warm fuzzies. But if warm fuzzies aren't enough for you, there are statistics. And this is why it's so important for people to feel like they belong. People are more productive. They're even 70% safer. I don't know how that one works, but that's an interesting fact. And before I end this talk, I'd like to just say that none of these whats operate in a silo. Building better environments can build a better sense of belonging. Increasing your emotional intelligence can have an impact on your remote management. So I hope you all took a little bit away from this talk, and I hope at lunch today you'll talk about how you're focused on your people. And when you go back to your companies, you'll talk about what your whys are and what your employees need. And I really hope that we continue this discussion and that next year, one of you is up here sharing with all of us how to build the bestest, most ultimate remote teams.